Hey, and welcome back to another week of Moving to Georgia. I am Sarah Maslowski with KeyPoint Homes Group, helping you move to the North Metro Atlanta area. And I am excited to be here with you this week. And we're going to talk about all things growth and what is happening specifically in Cumming. It is, I want to say up and coming. That would be a great dad joke, right? But it's not up and coming. It's already been a very popular place to be for a while, and it continues to grow and grow and grow. And so we're going to dig into a little bit more about what is causing Cumming's growth and what are some things that are planned to happen, developments that are planned to happen in Cumming in the coming months and years. If you have any dad jokes about Cumming, that could get me in trouble. No, I see. I'm not thinking before I'm speaking. But let me pivot back to the topic at hand, which is growth in North Georgia and what is happening in Forsyth County, which is Cumming, Georgia. So before we get into that, if you are joining us on the live stream, make sure that you let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I always love to see where you are joining us from, whether you are local or whether you are watching us planning to make a move, or maybe you already live here and you want to give your input into what you're seeing in the real estate market and with all the growth that is happening. So we have got a few people joining us here. Marlene is in Nottingham, Pennsylvania. Thanks for joining us. And we have someone local in Pendergrass. So I would love to hear your input on some of the things that we're going to talk about. Pendergrass is, I think, a really up and coming area as well. So Pendergrass is just in between Gainesville and kind of like the Jefferson area. And it's kind of like really farmland country-ish area, but there's a lot of new construction and growth happening in Pendergrass. I'm sure that you have seen that as well. And I definitely think that there's going to be more and more stores and grocery stores and restaurants in the next 5 years. I think that's going to be another place to watch for more developments, and it'll be much more populated than what it is right now. So one of the things I wanted to share with you is I came across this, which I thought was very interesting. So many of you know that Chick-fil-A has headquarters in Atlanta. And I saw this on the news the other day that Chick-fil-A plans to open up a 2-story drive-through restaurant in Atlanta. And they're also opening up a walk-up store in New York City. But that's not what we care about. We care about this cool 2-story drive-through restaurant. And look at that rendering. It looks pretty cool. I've seen a concept like this, not drive-through though, that I've seen a 2-story Taco Bell before. In I don't remember what city, but this is a really, really cool concept. We all know if you're local to the South and you've been to a Chick-fil-A, you know how incredibly efficient Chick-fil-A is with their drive-through. It is like none other. They should give all the other chain restaurants not only lessons on great customer service, but also the efficiency of their drive-through. So it'll have 2 drive-through lanes and you can actually drive under the restaurant. But here's the thing is they haven't announced where in Metro Atlanta they're going to be putting this new 2-story drive under restaurant. And so I'm curious, I wonder where they will put that. I am going to guess maybe like somewhere in Gwinnett County or maybe closer over there to the Alpharetta area. That's going to be my guesses, but this is going to be something that we should watch and look at to find out. And then, of course, I'm going to go visit because that's really cool. So that is something interesting. If you're joining us and you're not from Georgia, wherever you're from, have you ever been to a Chick-fil-A? Sometimes I have clients that visit and that's like the thing to go do. One of the things that they want to go do is go to a Chick-fil-A. So you have to check it out. The fried chicken nuggets are really good. Our Pendergrass local person, TBN, yes. So in Pendergrass, you get a lot of spillover from the Brazelton and Houston areas. And as they start to develop those more, they need more land. And so they've found that land in Pendergrass. Marlene says that my friend likes the populated areas. He has a house in Lawrenceville, and I would like to have land away from crowded areas as well. Well, I think you should join our friend that's also in the live stream that is watching us from Pendergrass. That is a definitely less populated area. And I also, if you're just joining us on the channel, I talk a lot about Monroe. I think Monroe is a good area to be in where it's not quite that crowded, but you have really good options and you have large lots there, which is something of an anomaly and very unique about that area with what developers are doing there. Typically, you're getting like a new construction home on a 1/4 acre lot. So a lot of people want a little bit more land. TBN says Walnut Grove would be the next rural area near South Gwinnett. Yeah, that is definitely true. And Marlene also tells us that Chick-fil-A is way too crowded. You think so? I mean, really, it is always truly busy unless you're going like at a 3 o'clock. No, maybe 2:30. 2:30 in the afternoon, maybe it's not quite as busy. But don't you feel like they're really efficient and quick about getting people through? Sometimes I think, man, that line is way too long. And then you just get in it and you like zip, zip, zip right around. They even have like traffic cops. I say traffic cops. It's Chick-fil-A people wearing the gear, and they're out there directing the traffic around the Chick-fil-A because there's so many cars and they're trying to make sure people can get in and out. So back to the topic at hand, outside of how great Chick-fil-A is and that new 2-story development that is coming in Atlanta. I covered this on the channel a couple months ago, and that was the fact that in Forsyth County and Cumming, they announced that they were putting in they're proposing a brand new mixed-use development that was going to be huge, with an arena and a hotel, office space, housing, shopping, everything. And their goal was to, with that arena, hopefully attract an NHL hockey team. So the plan was not only to have a hockey team, but to also hopefully host concerts in the off season. And this development is called The Gathering. So if you missed the announcement on that, I'm going to share with you a little bit more to give you the background. And first, let's take a look at where they are proposing this to go. So I'm going to zoom out on the map for you. All right, so we have Alpharetta and you have Cumming. So the Gathering at South Forsyth, it's really at the south end of Forsyth County, which is the county that Cumming's in. And I am going to zoom in on this. So this is just off of Georgia 400, and it's off of this exit that has Halcyon. Now, Halcyon is already a mixed-use shopping development, but there you have some really good restaurants, kind of like a smaller outdoor shopping area. It's not very big, but it's also not anything to laugh at either. And so this is the area down here, just off of Ronald Reagan, and where McGinnis Ferry turns into Union Hill is where they are planning on putting this big mixed-use development. And me just looking at the map, and I look at that, I'm like, oh, that's going to be a very crowded area, especially with what they have planned to put there. So let me share with you what the Gathering is going to look like. So let's see here. All right, what they're planning is so cool, and I really hope that they do end up getting this through the permitting and the zoning, and that this pushes forward. It's still kind of like very in the early phases, and yet the plans that they have put forth look very, very cool. So it's a planned world-class mixed-use development destined to become the entertainment hub of North Georgia and the gateway into South Forsyth County. So this is what the outside of it is going to look like. They're wanting it to be family-friendly retail and dining experiences, open community green spaces, water features, walking trails. They're planning on connecting this to the Big Creek Greenway, which connects Alpharetta and Roswell together. So you'd be able to walk from essentially Alpharetta all the way to the Gathering. That is a neat idea. And it's saying it's where community meets culture, and they are hoping to not only attract top-tier concerts and sporting events, but they're also going to provide residents and visitors with a comfortable spot to meet, play, and enjoy life. If you are in the Atlanta area or you visited and you've gone to the Braves Stadium over at the Battery in Marietta in Cobb County, in my mind, this is essentially what I kind of envision this area to be. So the Battery has the Braves Stadium, and then they have a hotel there. They have lots of restaurants and shopping, and it's such a fun place to go to, even when there's not a Braves game. They've got parking decks, and they also have office space. And so this is really what they're trying to do here in South Forsyth County. This is the greenway that I was telling you about, Big Creek Greenway. This is the proposed gathering trailhead where the gathering is actually going to be. And we're kind of looking at this sideways. So if you're looking at a map, Cumming would be north. So if we could just turn this on its head, this is kind of South Roswell, North Cumming. And this is what they are proposing. All right. And then look at this arena. I mean, that's pretty darn cool. And right now, if you are living in North Metro Atlanta area and you want to go to a concert or a sporting event, there's not a whole lot of options without having to drive quite a distance depending upon where you live. So I mentioned that we have the Braves, which play over in Marietta. And then down in Atlanta, you have Mercedes-Benz Stadium and you have State Farm Arena. Those are options for sporting events. They also host concerts as well. And then you have some smaller venues around Atlanta or the metro area that host smaller concerts. But this seems to be like a really good thing that would bring a lot of economic activity into the area. But the challenge becomes, can Forsyth County, can Cumming handle all of this growth? And so one of the things that recently the local commissioners and people, they are studying whether or not, what is the economic impact that this is going to have on the area? Not only positive, but what are the negatives that this could potentially have on the area? And one of the things that they're looking at is workforce. Do we have enough workforce available to sustain the amount of jobs that it's going to create? But one interesting thing that they pointed out, and I will share this article with you. Let's see here. They mentioned that part of their sustainability study, and this is in the Forsyth County News, they were saying, does Forsyth County have the workforce to sustain the Gathering Arena project? One of the things that they were looking at is, for similar developments like this, where do those workers come from and where do they live? And what they found, it says that the data has shown that approximately 50% of the workforce of each mixed-use development lives within a 10-mile radius of their job, and then some live within a 30-mile radius of their workplace. And so whenever I read that, one of the things I thought about was, what about affordable housing for all of these workers? Where are they going to live, especially if they are not currently, or if they're relocating here? We have a huge problem with affordable housing here in the metro Atlanta area, not only with apartments, but also housing as well. And so that's something interested in. And so I'm curious, if you're joining us and you're watching me live, what do you think? And have you heard about this new mixed use development called The Gathering? Do you think the Cumming area can handle the growth that this would cause? And I have to say that if you're thinking about maybe buying a house in Forsyth County, this is definitely something that I would take into consideration in terms of buying a home, because it's definitely going to have probably a positive impact on your home values. And that would be a great opportunity to take advantage of. And we're already seeing so much growth in the Cumming area, where South Forsyth is already pretty populated. And so that's forcing people to consider areas north of Cumming. And so you have, not only is Cumming super popular area, but Dawsonville, which is just north of Cumming on Georgia 400, those home prices have also seen a huge increase in home prices. So if you are joining us, please let me know where you're watching from. Of course, I'm here to answer your questions. If you have any questions at all about making a move to the North Metro Atlanta area, anything about the market, any kind of input you want to put, I would love to answer your questions. So feel free to drop those below. Marlene, you asked, is Southern Georgia full of swamps? Yes and no. So Southeast Georgia, corner pocket of Southeast Georgia, there's a lot of swampland there. That's where the Okefenokee Swamp is. Tell you a funny story. My one and only time I went camping with my husband, I grew up in South Georgia, and he wanted to go camping, and he wanted to go to the Okefenokee. And so I thought that would be a nice little weekend getaway. And so we borrowed all the camping gear, packed it all up, and there at the state park in Okefenokee, you could rent kayak. And so I was like, oh, that'll be fun. I've never been kayaking before. Let's rent a kayak. And so you could rent a kayak from the little state park hub there. And then they have like a launch thing right into the swamp. Well, we know there's alligators in the swamp, right? But what I didn't take into account is that the alligators, crocodiles, whatever they were, they're just like laying out there, like sunbathing on the bank of the swamp. And then when you get into a kayak, you were like level with the alligator that's just like sitting right there staring at you. And we made it, I don't know, maybe like 10 or 12 paddle strokes down. I had to go past all of these alligators that were just sunbathing and kind of like level with me and somewhere in the water. And I was like, no way, I cannot do this. So we turned around, went back, and we rented a John boat with a motor. So I was like, okay, we have a motor and I can get away if we need to. And yeah, it was not for me. It also rained that night. And then it leached through the tent, and we like kept moving our sleeping bags around to the tent the entire night, trying to escape the leaks. So not a good first camping experience, and it was my only. But yeah, so there are swamplands down there, but you'd have to like go seek that out. And fortunately or unfortunately, there are no really housing options down there because it doesn't make suitable land to build a house. So you don't need to worry about that. Let's see here. My Pendergrass guy, TBN, says the bad thing is too much growth for those of us that want peace and quiet. Due to growth in Forsyth, a lot of people have moved further north to Dawsonville and Lumpkin County. Yes. And it's not surprising. I mean, it is a cause of like supply and demand, but home prices in Dawsonville have gotten exponentially more expensive than what they used to be because people are seeking out more northern housing options. And so it's like you have to keep kind of going north and north and north and out to seek more rural, peaceful land. So I definitely agree with that. Andres, you are looking to buy investments at Mundy Mill, and do you think it's a good choice for a rental property? Andres, you need to call me and let's connect. So my phone number is directly below this video, and I love Mundy Mill. Go back to 2020. I have a video on that neighborhood. Chafin builds a really great house, and I think Gainesville is a fantastic area to have an investment property in. I live in Gainesville. I have an investment property here myself. I think it's a really great idea. This area is growing so much, and that is a really great area for families. And even though they allow rentals, it's not one of those neighborhoods where it's a rental neighborhood, if that makes sense. So if you're a resident that's living in there, you're not going to feel like you're living next to someone that's not going to also take care of their house, because the HOA has pretty good, strict rules in there for maintaining home values and things like that. So I definitely feel like that is a good option. And I would love to connect you with some off-market properties that I know of in that neighborhood as well. So reach out to me. And if you are just joining us, please let me know where you're watching from. And if you have any questions about the market or making a move or anything about the North Metro Atlanta area, put those down below and we'll make sure that we get to them and answer your questions. And one thing that you're going to find tonight below the live stream is a link to our new newsletter, where we're going to be sharing with you every single week, things like this, information about what's coming to the area, new restaurants that are coming, things that you can expect if you're planning on moving here, or if you already live here in the area, things that are going to impact your day-to-day lives and things that you're going to need to know. So make sure you sign up for the newsletter. That link is directly below the video. So One thing I found was very interesting is recently, and if you're thinking about making a move to Georgia, you're going to like this. So let's pull this up. Recently, there was a House bill that was passed, and Governor Kemp signed this into law. And that was the ability for local municipalities, local cities to vote to halt the trend of rising property taxes. And I know, if I know anything about Georgia voters, for sure they're going to come out in full force and vote for this. So this article was as it relates to Forsyth County, but House Bill 717 was introduced and it was passed in the 2023 legislative session and signed into law by Governor Kemp. And what that's going to do, it's going to enable local residents to vote on a local tax exemption through a ballot referendum. And that's going to happen during the 2024 election cycle, which is positive, right? Because we're going to have a presidential election that's going to bring out a lot of voters, a lot of local voters. And I can tell you, we are all going to be voting for this local referendum that many, many cities are going to be voting for. And so what's happened is that with the rising home prices, property valuations have gone up, which leads to rising property taxes as well. Now, the good thing is if you're considering living in Forsyth County, they have one of the lowest property taxes in the metro Atlanta area, only 0.85% on average of an effective tax rate. So 0.85% of your value of your home or what you paid for your home is kind of what you can estimate to expect to spend on property taxes. Now, if you compare that to like Gwinnett County, you're looking at 1.2, Fulton County, which is Alpharetta, that is kind of like 1.29 in a lot of areas as well. So definitely overall, Forsyth County has the lowest property taxes, and yet this is something that all cities are going to be able to vote on. But essentially, what this is going to do is that if you vote in favor of the ballot referendum, what it's going to do is it's going to create a rule that says home values will not be able to increase by more than 4% year over year for those who apply and receive the exemption. Now, likely they're only going to apply this to your homestead exemption. So meaning that if you personally own the home, and I don't know how other states operate or work like this, but if you own your home here in Georgia, you can apply for what they call homestead exemption. That saves you a little bit on a break of your property tax bills because you personally own the home and you're not an investor or a company that owns a bunch of houses. So they're going to give you a little bit of break because you live here, right? So essentially, it's going to increase that homestead exemption, or it's going to put a cap on there so that the tax assessor can only increase the valuation of your home by 4% each year. And that would be a huge welcome relief because in the past 2 years, year over year, home values have increased 20% year over year. So if you are on a fixed income and you don't have the budget to allot for those higher monthly payments that's going to result from that higher property taxes, then you can find yourself in a real pickle or a real conundrum if you can't afford the increased property taxes, especially if you're looking at 20% year over year increases. Now, that 20% year over year increase is an anomaly, right? That's only happened during these kind of like unicorn years of the pandemic. So, but on a normal average, your home value increases 3 to 5% year over year. And so this is going to kind of put that cap on it, which will protect you so that the tax assessor can't come by and say, hey, your home value is now worth 25% more than what it was last year. And so that's important to know. If you have any questions, make sure you let me know below. And so I'm curious, is that something that you would find beneficial? And does the town that you currently live in, maybe from another state, do y'all already have something like this in place and Georgia's just behind? Let me know. We've got my reality watching us from Dahlonega. So Dahlonega is just above Dawsonville, and I'm sure you're seeing a lot of spillover growth in Dahlonega as well. Crawlers and Custom says, welcome for joining us, Evelyn and James from Miami again. And y'all are meeting with my great partner in October and hopefully finding a house. I'm excited for y'all. Y'all are going to be in good hands finding a home there. So, one of the great benefits of making this great content is hopefully you find it great. Is to help people and meet and connect with people from all across the country and helping you find a home here in Georgia that meets your needs. And there is nothing better than getting the opportunity to help you and welcome you to the great state of Georgia. I felt like a light just got brighter or something. Knock on wood, we have not had a person, client, friend move here yet that hasn't just absolutely loved it. I take that back. I talked to one person who they moved here and they rented, and the wife just absolutely hated it. And so they decided they were not going to buy. That is the one person out of hundreds that I've had the opportunity to talk to over the past couple of years that has not absolutely loved it. So I'm curious if you're watching this on the live stream, let me know in the comments if you recently made a move here, if you love it, don't love it, what you like, what you don't like. Just let me know. So speaking of all the growth that happens or that is happening in the North Metro Atlanta area, I thought it'd be interesting to kind of see what home prices are doing in these counties that we're talking about. So let me pull that up for you and share that. So I love going into our local MLS system and showing you the data directly from home sales from our MLS system, because this is where the data comes from, right? So Forsyth County is this green line. Let me see if I can make this a little bit bigger for y'all. Okay. So we are looking at year over year prices, and in July 2023, now this is a median sales price. So the median sales price for a home in Forsyth County, which is coming, was $600,000. And if you look at Hall County, which is in yellow, $400,000. So you got Forsyth County, which sits on the western side of Lake Lanier, and then Hall County sits on the opposite side of Lake Lanier. And so you have drastically different home prices. And Cumming is definitely a fantastic place to be. And yet the home prices have definitely significantly risen at a higher rate than they have over in Hall County. And it'll be interesting to see the impact that if that gathering arena multi-use development gets full steam ahead, what is that going to do to home prices? So, and you see here the entire FMLS area that stands for First Metro Listing Service. And that kind of encompasses like all of Metro Atlanta area and just like a big old circle radius around, everything that is kind of touching near Atlanta. So one of the other towns that we frequently help clients in that we absolutely love is Alpharetta. And I'm only going to pull up the city of Alpharetta because the county of Alpharetta is in Fulton County, and it's a very oddly shaped county, and it really stretches like all the way down into Atlanta and north of Atlanta as well, all the way up to Alpharetta. So the median sales price of a home in Alpharetta was $680,000 in the month of July. So that is definitely, a little bit of an increase of where they were last month at 645. But I'm going to zoom back out so you can kind of see the pace of this graph. And so this graph is taking you all the way back for the past 3 years. And if you go back and look for the past 3 years, there's been a little bit of seasonality in these sales, and the averages have dipped a little bit. But overall, we have seen substantial growth in prices, and it's not something we're expecting to see slow down anytime soon. And so as you're thinking about making a move and where you want to buy a house, my best advice is, gosh, just get in where you can and start building that equity. Even if whenever you move here, if this house is not your dream house, at least get into this real estate market, build that equity, and then use the equity that you have in this house to buy that house that you really want. I also say that to first-time home buyers as well. Your likely your first house that you're going to buy, especially here in the metro Atlanta area, if you're a first time home buyer, is not going to be your forever house. Marlene says that she hasn't moved here yet, but she likes the South way better than the North. And that is a good point, Marlene. So you don't know what you like until you come here and you visit. And I can't stress enough that you have to come visit, drive around, put boots on the ground so that you can really get a sense for what you like and what you don't like. Because the things and the areas that I'm telling you that I say, hey, these are really great areas, you may get here and be like, this is not at all what I feel like is for me. And I actually prefer this area. And so you really have to get to know what you like. And these videos and information that we provide are great jumping off starting points, but nothing can beat kind of like that boots on the ground research that you can do to discover what you like and what you don't like. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. TBN says the best part of Hall County would have to be in North Hall, and those prices up there are pretty high as well. Yeah, so all of Hall County has gotten to be, just like anywhere else, the home prices are growing. And I have lived in Gainesville now for 8 years, moved from South Georgia. We used to live down in Brunswick, Georgia on the coast for a couple of years. And my husband and I were talking about this yesterday, about just how much Gainesville has grown and how cool it is. It just keeps getting better and better. And what I mean by that is they've spent a lot of money on the downtown area, making it much more, I don't want to say consumer friendly. And so there's a lot of people down there eating out, shopping at the restaurants, enjoying the square on the park, hanging out down there, meeting friends after work for drinks. And it's just so charming and so kind of idyllic. And even though they had the infrastructure and the square has always been there, many people didn't quite use it as much as what they are now. And so I really love it. And we're getting way more local restaurants, which I love. That was one of my complaints about whenever we moved here. It just didn't feel like we had that many local restaurants, and we had a ton of chain restaurants. So I'm happy for all of that. My reality said, you were saying about homestead exemptions. If you own your own house, should you apply for homestead exemption? Yes. So the great thing about homestead exemption is in the state of Georgia, you only have to apply for it once. So once you apply for it, it stays on your house for as long as you own it until you sell it. So if you've recently bought a home, or even if you've owned it for a while and you don't know if you have a homestead exemption on your property tax bill, all you have to do is call up the county or the city. They can look that up for you. You can also look to see if it's on your property tax bill. You'll see something that says a homestead exemption, but it's super easy to apply for. Most counties will allow you to do it online, and you only have to do it that one time. So if you work with me as your real estate agent, whenever you buy that house, I'm going to remind you that following year that you need to apply for your homestead exemption. Now, one thing to know is that some counties will only let you do it the following year. So a little bit of a tricky situation, but most homeowners already have the property tax exemption on their property tax bill. So if you buy a house from someone and they already had the homestead exemption on their property tax bill, whenever you get that new tax bill at the end of that year, you are going to benefit from their homestead exemption that they already had. And so a lot of people sometimes forget about it because they see it on there, and yet the next year when all the property taxes get switched over into your name, that is when you have to make sure that you do that one-time application so that you can now get it in your name. So a lot of counties don't let you do that until the following year, and you have to do it typically by around April. Usually March or so is the deadline for most of these counties. So make sure that you make a note, go ahead and check in with the county. But yes, you should for sure should check in on that because it is going to save you some money. Now, it's not going to be like significant amount of money. It's going to vary by county based upon how much homestead exemption they give you, but it's going to save you a couple $100. And hey, we can all save a couple $100 right now, right? So definitely a great question. And I was talking to a friend the other day, and she said, hey, I saw something that you send out about homestead exemption. We've owned now like 4 houses and we've never done this. So they called and got the homestead exemption applied to their property tax bill. And that was definitely a good savings for them. And now they can take advantage of it. So I'm curious if you're watching from another state. If you don't, I'm curious to know kind of, do you have homestead exemption in your state? I'm always finding out from my clients from other states, like what's different and what's normal and what's not normal. And it's always really cool and interesting to find out. If you're just joining us from the live stream, please let me know where you're watching from. I would love to give you a shout out and say, hey. I would also love to answer any questions you may have. If you haven't already liked and subscribed to the channel, make sure you do that. I put out videos every single Sunday, and we get time to spend with each other every single Wednesday here on the live stream, answering your questions, talking about the real estate market and what is coming and what growth and development is happening in the North Metro Atlanta area. And if you haven't already signed up for the newsletter, make sure that you sign up for that. It's directly below this video. You'll get great information on what's coming to the area and what you need to know about. So that you should know about it, right? So we're going to send that out every single week so that you have an opportunity to stay up to date on what is going on. So I'm curious, if you have any questions about making a move, make sure that you drop those below. Or if you have any questions or comments about what's happening in the North Metro Atlanta area, I would love to know. One thing that happened for, or is happening for a lot of students today and tomorrow here in Georgia, is going back to school. And my out-of-state clients are always a little bit horrified that school starts so early here in Georgia. And whenever I have clients that I'm talking to kind of like in June, and they say, yeah, we want to be here, we have kids. And I'm like, oh gosh, we have to hurry up and get you here because school starts like in just a few weeks. And so that is something that's a lot of different from a lot of northern parts of the country. And I guess western parts of the country, schools don't start back as early as they do here. So I'm curious if you're watching, like, when does school start where you are? I'm not looking forward to the increase in my commute that the school buses and school zones are going to create. I wonder if that's different for people from other states. So one thing that's interesting here about Georgia is that we don't have a whole lot of interstates or things like that we travel on unless you're like having to go completely to a different city. And so a lot of times you're like navigating back roads and side streets and bigger side roads to get to where you want to go. And you go through a lot of school zones. And so sometimes those school zones can definitely add, a good 5-ish, 10 minutes to your drive, depending upon the time of day that you go through it. And I'm wondering how that compares to commuting around and driving around other areas. Citizen PM, heavily considering moving from Salt Lake City to Gainesville with a 100% remote job based in California. How is the high-speed internet service there? It's critical for my work. Great news is I've never had someone relocate here that did not have access to high-speed internet. The pros and cons about where you choose to move from is that sometimes you can only have one option for internet service provider, and then sometimes you have 2 or 3 options for an internet service provider. I'll give you the example of my house. We get to live on the lake, but we live kind of like on a smaller street, and there's not a whole lot of houses on our road. And so we have one option for an internet service provider. Thankfully, they do a really good job. We were actually able to put in a business line because my husband also needs really high-speed internet. And so that's a cool option that you might want to consider depending upon what your needs are. But yes, you're not going to have a problem finding high-speed internet unless we're talking about looking up in like way North Georgia or really North Hall County, kind of like out in the sticks, as I say, because I grew up in South Georgia, and if you drove 15 minutes outside of the town, you were in the sticks, like the pine trees, and you had to hope and pray that you had enough gas in your car because you wouldn't find a gas station for a long while. But no, you're going to have plenty of options depending upon where you live for high-speed internet. And I would love to help you. We've recently helped quite a few people from Salt Lake City. So it's definitely a great area to be in. Oh, my reality. I work for Comcast and we are busy putting in an RPHY high-speed fiber 10 gig. Oh, okay. Well, that's exciting. I do not know what RPHY means, but I'm assuming that that's something that's necessary for very, very high-speed internet. I do know 10 gigs is high. So, yeah, that is definitely great to know. My contact information is below this video. So if you're thinking about making a move, I always encourage clients to reach out to me sooner than what you think you might need to. It's always good to kind of have those preliminary conversations because sometimes you may find out some information like we don't have high-speed internet, and that would kind of like kill that idea. Or sometimes I have clients that reach out to me and they say they want 10 acres for $400,000 and they need an in-law suite. I'm like, oh, it just doesn't exist here anymore. I'm sorry. So that's always important to know if we have the ability to have what you want. TBN says, I know some people that want to buy homes in Big Canoe, but it wasn't a good idea since internet was horrible in that area. Yeah, I know nothing about Big Canoe. It is way up there in the mountains and tiny town. I do have a friend that lives there. She's in the mortgage industry. Very pretty, a very pretty mountain town on a lake on Big Canoe. But it's definitely, a completely different style of life up there. But that is a good point. So for sure, there are some areas in North Georgia and out in the sticks that you're going to have trouble with that high-speed internet as well. One of the things that interesting story that I wanted to share with you that I recently came across is that oftentimes I get clients that will say like, hey, we want to buy new construction. Do we need you? And you'll see in videos, you'll see real estate agents say, yes, you need someone to represent you on your side because that agent for the builder represents the builder. Well, I had a great client that watches the channel reach out to me saying they wanted to relocate from Colorado and make a move out here to Georgia. They came out for the exploratory trip. We found a fantastic neighborhood that they wanted to build in. And one of the things that they wanted to build is that we needed to kind of align it with the timing of when they were retiring and what lined up for them. So it was important that they move out here in spring of 2024. Great thing is that this builder, it was going to take them 10 months to build the house. And, it just so happened to fall within that time frame of exactly when they needed it to be. Well, a few months into the build, the builder reaches out, the agent, and says, hey, we actually are a little bit ahead of schedule. And so we need to move up the closing date. And so we went back, kind of talked to my client, and they were okay with moving it up the 4 weeks that the builder wanted to move up because it still kind of aligned with what worked for the buyer. And so then another 4 weeks goes by and the agent calls up and she says, hey, we're really ahead of schedule. And instead of closing in March, we want to close in January. We were like, what? Y'all, I've never had a builder. I've had a builder close a week early. I've never had a builder say, we want to close 5 months earlier than what we originally planned. And this was going to have like significant impact on my buyer. It was going to cause them to have to do a different type of loan program because they would own 2 houses at the same time, and just all kinds of a mess of a problem that would cost my buyer significant amounts of money to move that closing date up. And we were like, no, that's not an option. And the builder was like, I'm sorry, this is what you're going to have to do, or you're going to have to pay an $18,000 fee to close later because that's what's going to be our carrying expense on this house. And I don't know this for a fact, but I can guarantee you that if this buyer did not have an agent representing him on their side, pushing back on the builder, that builder likely would have said, sorry, this is what the contract says, and this is what you have to do. And that buyer would have been between a rock and a hard spot. But I, on the other hand, representing the buyer, knew that this was like totally outside the norm and that really this wasn't really addressed in the contract. And so we kept pushing back and Finally, the builder chose to do the right thing and said, you know what, we're going to go back to our original close date. We'll work it out on our end. So it wasn't going to impact the buyer. But guarantee you, if I would not have been involved in that situation, or the buyer would not have had an agent representing him, I'm pretty sure they would have strong armed the buyer into thinking that he had no options, and the builder would have gotten his way. So I am happy that the builder decided to do the right thing. And it was just such an important lesson of why you need an agent on your side. I also had another builder for another client. They put in the wrong type of shower into the new build, and we're having to redo that. And they wanted to delay closing because of that mistake. And we were able to push back and get them to hold to their original timeline. So it's rare that you have an instance where you actually need the agent on your side. And yet when it does happen, you're like, wow, I'm so glad that I had someone there representing me on my side. Lori, watching us from Utah, you just closed on a home in Savannah near the South Historic District, got a home for $244. You cannot get that price now. No way. And Savannah is such a gorgeous city. When we lived in Brunswick, we used to drive up to Savannah all the time for day trips, and it's so beautiful. Definitely, if you are moving to Georgia, Savannah is a fantastic weekend getaway. And definitely should be a place that's on your list to visit because it's so beautiful. Lefty plays righty. Something was up. The builder to be in that kind of rush. Yes, I think my suspicion is that there was some drastic miscommunication behind the scenes between the builder and the agent. And I really think it was the agent that screwed up. And she was trying maybe to cover her tracks. I don't know. Anyways, something was up though. And yeah, I've never had a builder tell me that a house was ready months ahead of schedule. So just slow down. There's plenty of other houses to build, and they can go jump into another house and start building that. Oh, okay. Lori's not moving until next year, but you went ahead and bought the house. Okay. That's very interesting. And I love that you utilize that strategy, because this is something that I tell clients all the time, is that home prices are going to continue going up. They're not coming down. And if you have the flexibility and freedom to buy now, it's going to save you money. But you only really want to do that if it really makes sense financially for you to do that, right? And so my job is just to give you the information so that you can make the best decision possible. And if you have that flexibility, go for it. I just talked to some other clients who were planning on buying an investment home in Gainesville. And they're like, yeah, we want to do that in the next 6 months to a year. And so the question was, well, what's important to you about that time frame? And they're like, well, just gives us some time. And I explained to them, I was like, well, if that time is going to cost you $5,000 to $10,000, is that worth that time? Or would you rather do that now? And so we were kind of looking at the data and looking at trends of home prices. And we're able to look at that and realize, okay, if we can possibly make it happen sooner rather than later, it's definitely going to save us money. So I think you made a really smart decision, Lori. All right. Well, everyone, thank you so much for joining me for another great time here in discussion on all the growth that's happening in North Georgia, specifically over there in Forsyth, and kind of the impact that that's going to have on the local economy. If you did not catch the beginning of this video, you're going to want to go back and watch it, because I really put my foot in my mouth and opened up a can of worms with what I was saying. So I can't wait for the comments to roll in on this video. If you haven't liked or subscribed to the channel yet, make sure you do that. Sign up for our newsletter below. And if you are thinking about making a move, make sure you reach out. And I will see you next week on the live stream next Wednesday. And of course, look forward to the next video that is coming out this Sunday. Talk to y'all next week.